Welcome to another edition of the Business and Personal Podcast, where we bring you closer to the people you do business with. And Debbie Stroup is with us in our 15 Days of Medicare series leading into annual enrollment that starts on October 15th. We started this series on October 1st, so you can go back to the Business and Personal Podcast feed to listen to any of the previous messages. But tip number 6 is all about doctors and prescriptions. And Debbie, you touched a little bit about that in the last episode about saving money. And that's something we felt like we could go deeper into here. So just talk about the importance and understanding that the doctors and prescriptions that you regularly use and take are in your plan, and just don't assume that's going to be the case.
Right. So, you might have a doctor that you're working with at U of M, and you're going to assume that they work with everything. I don't need to worry about that. No, that is absolutely not correct. A lot of our doctors are not what we call independent doctors anymore. You may remember back in the 50s, they had that little black bag and they just worked for themselves. Most of them work for a doctor's group or a hospital or even something bigger than that, like a great big corporation. So it's really important that we research to make sure that that doctor is in the plan that we're looking at. Another thing is, I find this all the time. I see Dr. Dan Smith. Okay, I look up Dr. Dan Smith. Guess what? There are 25 Dan Smiths in the Detroit area. Well, Dr. Dan Smith is my OBGYN. Guess what? There are 4 Dr. Dan Smiths who are OBGYN. So it's important that we not only know the name, but what they do, but where they work as well. So when I do this, I look up Dr. Dan Smith. He's an OBGYN and he's based in Royal Oak. So that's what we're looking for. It's really important that we are very specific about our doctors. You need to take control of this and make sure that your doctors, your specific doctor, is in plan. We can't assume that, oh, they're in my plan. Because guess what? If you go to that doctor and they're not in plan, guess who pays for it? You do. And that can be expensive, especially if they're a doctor that it's difficult to get in and it takes a long time and they charge a lot. Maybe they charge $500. Guess who pays for it? You do. All of it. So it's important that we do a very deep dive into every one of your doctors to make sure that they're in plan. We also need to do that with dentists. Not as difficult, but again, Smith, Jones, all very familiar in common word or common last names. So it's important that we make sure that your dentist is in plan, your eye doctor. And let's talk about prescriptions. Prescriptions are where it is. Really, that can cost you a lot of money. I hear people all the time talking about, oh, that medication won't be covered. Medicare doesn't cover that medication. Really? Are you challenging me on that? Because let's take a look. We can take a look at that medication to say, you know what? The plan you're on doesn't cover that medication, but this plan does. So then we set that plan aside, and then I look at all the other medications, and then we look at, okay, all these different plans that are going on. Then we combine it with all of the plans that the doctors work, and we kind of sift down to find the specific plan that works perfectly for you. And you can see where this can cost you a lot of money if we're in the wrong plan. You need to pay for your doctors out of pocket. You'll need to pay for your prescriptions out of pocket. You'll need to pay for your dentist out of pocket. And guess what? You worked hard for that money your whole life. I want you to save it. I want you to go through Medicare never thinking about Medicare, because you're in the right plan. Your doctors are covered. Your prescriptions are covered. And if you ever get confused or you're like, well, maybe that plan's better. Oh, remember, I got Debbie. Let me call Debbie and we'll take a look at that plan to see. But it's really important that your doctors and prescriptions are in plan.
Another great tip, Debbie, just like anything else in life, never assume, right? Take the deep
Right.
dive to make sure everything is in place. Every single person has a different prescriptions list, different doctors they go to.
Yep.
Nobody's cookie cutter, and you have to double check. And again, anybody that's listening to this, you've already signed up to your Medicare plan and it's still within annual enrollment, you can reach out to Debbie and she can do this double check for you. Make sure your doctors, your prescriptions are all lined up. So tip number 6, don't assume that your doctors and prescriptions are covered in your plan, or also don't assume that they're not covered at all, because you might be wrong and you might have coverages you didn't think existed.
100%.
So, all right. Thanks again so much, Debbie. To schedule your free Medicare consultation with Debbie Stroup, go to MichiganMedicareSpecialist.com or call 248-227-0347. That's MichiganMedicareSpecialist.com, 248-227-0347.